I'm making this video because, suddenly my YouTube feed got filled up with cosplay videos for some reason, and it got me thinking, I'm worried that people were going to think that I had some kind of lesbian cosplayer fetish. I don't. I know I talk about how I liked this lesbian cosplayer at one point, but when I liked them, because I liked them, I was not aware that they were a lesbian cosplayer. To me, they were a sweet, weird autistic goth girl, as far as I could tell. I mean, when I found out, they started telling me as a cosplayer, I was like, oh God, no, not like this. I'm very much the jealous type, and I was not especially happy about that, and it was just a really long process of, okay, well, I don't want to think that she's like a hoe or something. I don't want to be judgmental. I want to try to understand, get familiar with what she's interested in. And it was, it mostly just took her directly telling me that she doesn't like me to be like, well, okay, I'm going to maybe be a little more willing to judge her and not, try to mind bend my way about her making a video about how she loves sucking dick. Whatever her reason she had for making it, whatever, but I'm just like, it's a bit too much, not something that I'm super happy about, the cosplay. I mean, it would be one thing if it was something that she was interested in that happened to bring her that kind of attention, but to the extent that she was inviting it. I guess for me, there's a difference between wearing a swimsuit to go to the beach and going to the beach so that you can wear a swimsuit. But there was a particular moment when I started liking her is, one day I was just kind of walking by and there were some oranges on a table, and she said, those oranges have been on that table for a really long time. And I was like, yeah. And then I kind of moved on, and the next time I saw her, she started apologizing for being weird like that. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this woman is just so incredible. I couldn't stop thinking about that particular interaction we had. I knew another person that I was interested in. She kept complaining that I was insulting her. I'd call her short, she was dumb, she had bad taste in music. But those were not insults, ma'am. I was not insulting you because you were totally misunderstanding what I was thinking. I thought that those things were wonderful. Now, of course, I very much do not mean to, say bad things about cosplayers, or to say that every cosplayer is someone who wants sexual attention. Certainly not. But some definitely are. And, thinking over this, because I know I flipped off a baby, for me, when it comes to, that sort of thing, I'm very, very, very reserved, and I try to avoid doing anything that would give even the remotest hint of that kind of interest in people. Generally speaking, I try to avoid even thinking or noticing that a woman I see is attractive. If I start to, I'm the sort of person, I will close my eyes, I will look in a different direction, I will... that sort of thing in general. I try very hard. I take thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife very seriously, but it's also thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's girlfriend, love interest, person that is potentially, I'm generally dislike people who are extremely direct without checking in some way to make sure that somebody is single. That particular area I think most people have a particular area of ethics, proper behavior that they are very specific about. And for me, that's it. Again, I've never kissed anybody in my life, and I don't think that it's necessarily that I totally couldn't, but I never flirt with people ever. Yes. I am extremely squeamish when it comes to the S word type of S. I think that it's strange because I read the Marquis de Sade and I read that sort of extreme stuff, but for me that stuff doesn't register as being, that kind of content because it's so extreme. Like, people often think that I have these random fetishes when no, I just think that something is funny. Like, for me, the middle finger is the funny finger. I watch like cock and ball torture, and no matter how much I explain to people, it's like watching Johnny Knoxville's Jackass, but more extreme. It's just something that I think is interesting to look at. Whether something counts as pornography isn't a matter of... It's about how I react to it. Like, I don't react to that sort of stuff in that kind of way. And so that doesn't count as that sort of thing to me. And I'm very open to telling people about that sort of stuff. But the sort of characters and just people that I dislike most are like, really hedonistic, drugs, alcohol, just like fuck anything that moves type people. I generally don't like it when people are like that. I'm very romantic in a lot of ways, but I'm also try to be a rational romantic person as best I can. I think that once the feelings do start to get involved, there's not a whole lot you can really do about it. But I think it's like, I don't think that feelings are magic. I think that when you find people that, are a good fit for you and you spend time for them, you should develop feelings for them. I think that that's something that likely happens. So I think in many ways, romantic relationships are something of a choice. But again, in that particular way, I think that, again, things like bad words, things like sexual type things, they can very definitely be used as a joke and as a serious thing depending on the context. But I would be very careful to avoid doing anything that looks like any kind of flirting with anybody. I think that one thing that often makes me very uncomfortable and makes me really worry about my prospects for relationships is I kind of feel like I have a very weird view about sexuality. It's kind of outside of any sort of norm, religious, cultural, that I really know of. I generally think of it as being an emotional thing and sort of like a need fulfillment thing. What was I gonna say? Like, when I think of a really, really traditional view, I would say it is something that is only for the sake of producing children, and I do not think that, but I do think that it's like, if you're not creating and deepening an emotional attachment with somebody, I generally think of it as being a bad thing, unless it's a joke, or when you're by yourself and you're not thinking about like a real person. I generally think that like hentai is something that I'm more okay with than things about real people. Like, I think it's better to, do what you have to do with that sort of thing than, a picture of somebody, God knows, what they think about that being out there. Again, yeah, it serves some sort of purpose, but it has a wider purpose than just children. I guess, some people might say that I'm obsessed with the whole flipping off the baby thing, but it is just giving me a lot of things to think about and move forward, and, I'm just talking it over to make sure that I don't do that sort of thing again. But, so for me, judging somebody morally is entirely based off what they intended to do. I make a separation between, practical consequences and a person's moral value. I understand that I upset some people, and, I, maybe not in that particular situation, but in some other similar situations, I might have been similarly upset, that I might not have tried to get somebody fired like that, but... like, if somebody made a sexual joke, something like that, that's the sort of thing, those things can offend me. But I guess it's just really complicated what does and doesn't offend people. It's, and I feel like it feels like being arrogant for me to feel like I know. I often try to be spontaneous. I don't plan too much, because whenever I look at a plan, I just think about all the things that could go wrong, and it's too many. It's too many for me to think about. I know a lot of people think that I'm immature and irresponsible, but again, for me, it's humility. It's not being arrogant and thinking that I can see the future. I'ma just do something because it's good as anything else. But sexuality, flirting, relationships, sometimes, people think it's me being shy, and maybe to an extent it is, but again, it's often very principled reserve. It's, I don't like talking to multiple people at once. I don't like, playing the field, as people call it. Again, I have a lot of very complicated rules regarding what I do and don't do, what I don't and do. I think that one of the very most important things to me in life is, well, my goals, but it's not really a goal, is to never cheat on a partner and to never have a partner cheat on me. But I mean, there's no real way of knowing whether or not I've achieved that. And, I guess I'll know when I'm dead, but I won't. Another thing that worries me so much is you hear these stories about, how people had relationships that are 10 years long without them knowing anything, and then suddenly they find out that their spouse had like some family tucked away somewhere. And that just kind of makes life feel really awful, just the never really knowing for sure. And I don't know if there's a whole lot that can really be done about it. And that's one of those things where I wonder, I wish I was in one of the best things about being in a relationship is when you're single, you see people and then you have to sort of size them up and consider, well, would this person be a good match for me? But, when you're in a relationship, you don't even have to think about that. You should just say, nope, already in a relationship, sorry, bye. And, in the initial stages, there's a lot of just the wondering of, would this person be the type of person to be cheating on me? How many people is this person seeing? Does this person know that I'm not okay with that sort of thing? And stuff like that. I guess I just feel so vulnerable. I mean, I guess because I'm usually very alone-minded. I like alone activities and focusing on stuff. But I just think that I don't have the sort of, I guess, reasoned response to be I'm going to be I can't be a monk. I'm not going to go live in a monastery or something way out in the woods or something. I'm living and working in the world, and I do sometimes have feelings for people. But I guess, normally I try to really distance myself from people until the feelings get to a point where I'm like, well, okay, I just kind of have to, accept responsibility for this. I have to just, go forward with this here. But, I mean, it's, I guess, scary feeling this way about, people that you don't know very well, people who, they don't know they could be, really, really hurting your feelings without even realizing it. And it's just this sort of, I want to get in there and tell people and be able to set boundaries. It's when you're not dating people, you can't, I feel like you can't set that kind of boundaries with them. And that's the sort of awful thing about being single, I guess. It's just, I'm not saying that anybody's a bad person or anything, and, sometimes you have to hurt people's feelings, I guess. You gotta crack a few eggs if you want to make an omelet. You can't make everybody happy. Just because somebody feels really strongly about you, that doesn't mean that you have to date them, because, what if you said that to everybody? I just feel so anxious. I guess I imagine that there are a lot of people that think that cheating isn't a big deal, but more so than that, there's also just, people have very, very different ideas of what is and is not cheating. And I really think that there's no real standard that I can rely upon. And so it's just this big anxiety of, just this strong want to communicate with people. And, people often think that I'm being desperate when I'm talking about, I just really, really want to talk to you, like, for a while. But again, for me is, the important part of relationships and getting to know people is less about looking and seeing and experiencing and mostly just talking for a very long time. I mean, just, making sure that you can get that verbally, everything out there, and setting expectations and stuff like that, and just feeling like I'm not going to get totally hurt because you trust people. And even if you're right to trust people, that doesn't mean that they won't hurt you on accident. There are many, many, many ways to hurt a person on accident. And I wouldn't think that somebody is a bad person for unintentionally hurting me, but it still would hurt me. I wouldn't feel less... I probably would feel less hurt, but it's still bad. I don't like alcohol. I don't drink alcohol ever. I feel like, nothing good can come of it. And if somebody, cheated on me while they were drunk, I wouldn't be as upset about the cheating so much as I'd be upset that you put yourself in a situation where that sort of thing could happen. Airing my concerns like this just makes me feel better. And, I rarely ask people questions. I often feel very uncomfortable asking people questions or kind of probing into people. But I very much like to let people know things about me. Like when I am, I'm talking to a partner, I tell them very, very much about me. I completely infodump them. And, it's because, partly, a number of reasons. For one thing, I think that you can't really like a person if you don't know them. And so a person needs to get to know me before they even can like or dislike me. But also, again, just knowing what sort of things will make me upset just makes me feel, it makes me feel safer. I really, really mostly just want to feel, like I can be safe, I can be comfortable, and I can just not be thinking about these sorts of things all the time. I don't know if I'm making things better or worse, because when I, kind of air myself out, when I air out my feelings, and I often spend a pretty long time worrying about what sort of reaction I might get to those sort of things. Even a positive reaction is often sometimes I'm anxious about. Just getting positive affirmation from people is often kind of hard for me to deal with. I don't know if I'm not saying that I don't want it. I just don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm just going to be unhappy with everything. I love Japanese and Chinese culture, but I often worry that if I spend too much time with it, I'm going to absorb, some more permissive attitude to sexuality, I guess. And I don't even know if it's necessarily a rational thing, how I feel about, sexuality. But when I often read, Greek philosophy, I remember the story that really stuck with me was the story about, they're telling an example of a good man, and they're saying that, when he noticed that his wife was looking at somebody, he would go into the other room and pretend to be asleep. And, for me, that's a bit much. That's not the sort of attitude that I want to be absorbing. For me, reading books is often about absorbing ideas and mindsets and attitudes. But one of the reasons why I like so many conflicting things is because it makes me choose. I can't absorb everything and follow everything around me because there's so many different things around me and they conflict with each other. But, I guess just one of the things that horrifies me about Islam is, they talk about, having a garden full of virgin women. And I don't want a large number of virgin women. One is good. It's just more stress. There was even a time in my life where I was like, maybe okay, I need to stop being irrational. Maybe polygamy isn't too bad. But I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know. And one day I was actually reading the Quran, and the Prophet Muhammad said that no matter how much you may want to, you cannot treat all of your wives fairly. And if you can't, that to me is as good as saying it's bad. And if even the Prophet Muhammad is saying it's bad, then polygamy is bad. Like, I wish that there was some sort of database somewhere or something like that, where if anybody who was interested in me, who wanted to be, whether it's romantic, whether it's friendship, could just check all the things that they need to check before going in, and just hopefully they'd be responsible, and they wouldn't be like, well, if I've made it clear that, yeah, I really hate the idea of polygamy, but they're like, yeah, I want a polyamorous relationship, but, I'm a really go for this person anyway, that's pretty awful, and that would make me feel so nice if all of that was just out there somewhere, that, people who are just going to, cause problems can just avoid me. I feel like a broken record, but I also feel like I try to explain this to people so many times, and they just don't seem to get it. I don't know how it just seems to not click with people, this idea of, I just and I can't say that I would really mind having a stalker, honestly. Something that I even find a little bit reassuring. I mean, there are some negative future outcomes, but as long as it was a healthy kind of stalking, it wouldn't bother me personally. It'd make me feel much better about any sort of overextensions that I myself might commit. And just, again, I say it all the time, just feeling like somebody knows everything about me beforehand makes me feel a lot better.